All right, welcome everybody to the next session. We're about to start in a few minutes. We'll wait for everybody to log in. All right, for all of you who have joined us, my name is Dino Karpic, and I'll be presenting today's session of Autodesk Takeoff and its new features. Please note that this is grouped around all the Autodesk Construction Cloud webinars that you've seen so far with today's What's New presentation in this event. Before we begin, I do want to present all the people who are speaking through the Autodesk Construction Cloud platforms. So you've probably seen or heard from one of the following people. First is Michiel Oerendaal. He was dealing with the Autodesk Docs platform and how we can utilize our common data environment from the start. Next, we had Dario Mariozzi. He was dealing with the Autodesk building platform. So how do we take all of our document management elements and take them out onto site? After which, there was also Tabelo Nechibungululu. He was dealing with everything within the BIM Collaborate Pro items. So how do consultants and designers coordinate and collaborate on the same common data environment? And then myself, Dino Karpic, and I'll be dealing with the Autodesk Takeoff. So for everybody running QA/QC elements and wanting to do quantity takeoffs, this is then the session for you. So before we begin, there is a bit of content that we are going to cover within today's session. First, we are going to talk about the current methodology when it comes to quantity takeoff. So the current industry standards or industry norms that we see on a regular basis. The next item we want to discuss is, of course, the BIM environment. So a lot of you might have heard of this term or have heard speakers utilize this term. However, we will be going through frequently asked questions for the BIM environment. After which we will then go through some context around the BIM environment and how it adapts within the project lifecycle. Now, all of this is very important for those who are dealing with us or here today with us during this session, because it all comes back down to how those who are running takeoff elements can utilize Autodesk Takeoff. After which, when we're done and we have some time, we will then begin our Q&A session around this presentation. All right, so with that out of the way, let us begin. So let's go through our first area. This is the current methodology when it comes to quantity takeoffs into a BOQ scheduling. So basically the industry norms and standards. When we're talking about a traditional takeoff workflow, we can summarize it within 3 stages. These stages are acquiring of documents to start your takeoff process, usually 2D elements, whether it's hard copies or of course soft copies. The second stage is breaking down the information in a manual takeoff process. The goal is to quantify off of the design. And then finally, this leads us into our third stage, where we consolidate all this information into a legible BOQ schedule. So some of you have dealt with stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3, or a combination of all these items. I myself, when I first came into the industry, was working alongside an older gentleman who used to do this routinely, week after week, project on project. And all I can remember was the level of frustration that was given if we had misleading information. But we will get into that. Please note that these 3 icons that appear on your screen are what we usually utilize within this process. A computer and a printer to help us print the documents, PDF usually to help us read digital documents, and then finally pens, paper, stationery in order for us to quantify off a drawing or specific series of documents. So let's break down the stages now. Starting with stage one, hard and soft copies. A lot of you are probably very familiar with the stage. The idea is that we get our information, like a 2D drawing, usually at a specific size, and then we start running our stage one process of consolidating all the reliable documents from different consultants or different designers, depending on which department of takeoff you're running. Now, with that, there are huge advantages still to a stage one process of acquiring information. And this advantage is that drawings and PDFs can't be tampered with. Whatever is printed or whatever is PDF'd out is usually written in stone and thus cannot be changed. But there are workarounds here and there in order to do these changes, but we are guaranteed that no tamperment to the document has been done. So this then leads us now mainly to our disadvantages, mainly because there are quite a few. In this particular stage, the disadvantage that you're looking at is broken version or tracking systems. So how do you know you're always working with the latest information? Number two, over-constraining 2D information. What do I mean by this? Well, you can actually be given a 2D drawing and it is just full of junk, badly drawn items, too many revision clouds. There's too much to read from the document. For example, a line on a page can represent a wall, a pipe, a construction line, a hidden detail. If you are not familiar with the concept of 2D drawing and plannings, this can really hinder your stage one process. Now, one of the other disadvantages is, of course, what I call the 3 M's of broken workflows: misplaced information, misleading information, and mismanaged information. Any one of these items can stop, delay, hinder, or cause confusion within your stage one process. And of course, you still have your big three: your computer, your software items, and of course, your stationery to help you through this process. Nothing is really linked unless you are manually going from one point to another. Everything seems very siloed, very distant from each other. For example, your PC to the hard copy, or the information that you gain from, let's say, one consultant to another. Not everybody is sharing that same level of information. So there's not really one single source of truth. And of course, if anything is done incorrectly on this stage, it does affect the next stage. So let's actually go talk about the next stage. Stage 2, manual takeoffs. Let's say you manage to pass stage 1 now, and you are given the document. At this point, you start gathering all your necessary stationery equipment. And at first, it looks absolutely pretty and appealing. You know, to run this takeoff session becomes more of a hobby because you get to utilize all this different stationery. But for those of you who have been within this period of time or developed this type of so for all of you who've been through this item, all right, so this leads us now into our next session, stage 2, manual takeoffs. Now, let's say, for example, you have managed to pass stage 1 and you start with your takeoff items. The idea is now you're going to take what you've printed and you are going to take all that lovely stationery that you've gathered. And it all looks neat and tidy at first, especially when you start this process. It's really appealing because you have access to all these different colors, different techniques, and different objects to utilize within your takeoff process. So there are advantages to stage 2. But believe it or not, it's only one advantage if you're running a manual takeoff session, and that is you're enhancing your arithmetical skills. So all you're doing is you're perfecting the way you are counting and calculating. So there are many disadvantages now to this particular phase. And the first disadvantage is that it is a slow workflow. Nobody really wants to rush through this phase, because if you rush through this phase, you are going to end up creating major errors within your BOQ schedules. The second disadvantage is that work is cluttered and messy. Think about all that stationery, all that paper that you're gathering. Your desk might look clean at the start of the week, but towards the end of it, can you even find your keyboard on the desk? The third item is that there's little room for error. And this comes back to that first item of slow workflows. If you mess up on a piece of paper, if you've drawn and you want to erase that, it becomes incredibly difficult. And if you really do mess up within the quantity takeoffs and you miscount an item, it affects your BOQ schedule down the line. And then finally, those three legendary M's are back: misplaced information, misleading information, and mismanaged information. So essentially what you're looking at is this: a cluttered, messy workflow environment. You can't do much within this environment. In actual fact, you're constraining yourself. You're not developing further. And of course, these three objects are always there to help you out. Now, if your printer breaks or if your PDF reader is not as up to date, you're not going to get this information out as quick as you want. And of course, whatever happens in this stage was affected by the previous stage and is going to further affect you down the line onto the next stage. So let's actually talk about stage 3. Stage 3 is now when we are starting to generate a BOQ schedule. So we open up our PCs, we consolidate all that information, and we can start running our takeoffs from there. The advantage here is that we are creating a budget to work to. Anything over, we are then over budget. Anything under, that is a blessing for us because we save. However, there are more disadvantages that outweigh the main advantage item. And your disadvantages are: accuracy depends heavily on stage 1 and 2. Again, if you messed up in either one of those stages at any point in time, your BOQ is not going to be as accurate as you want it to be. So likelihood of you being over budget is quite high than being under budget. Next, there are manual revisions every time there's a change. So let's say you've finished creating a BOQ schedule this week and the drawing updates. One, you got to remember that you need to be working with the latest information. And if you don't get that update, your BOQ then falls away. The third item, again, and you'll see that there is a trend. Those three horrible M's are back: misplaced information, misleading information, and mismanaged information. The reason why I bring this context up every single time is because you're working in a very manual environment. You are the administrator around all the documents, all the drawings, and all your stationery. And of course, your three friends are there to help you. And if at any point anything gives up, your manual stage can come to a complete stop. And if anything is done incorrectly at this stage, well, it becomes increasingly frustrating. How many of you actually are going to go back and redo this BOQ schedule or this takeoff? Not a lot. And we're too scared to give it to a junior because a junior can mess this up even more. So what do? Well, we say, Hans, gets the Flammenwerfer. Burn it all to the ground. Honestly, because that's all paper is good for these days. So there needs to be a smarter approach with how we are doing quantity takeoffs, especially in an environment that asks us to be accurate, fast, and agile. So let's actually start talking about this environment, the BIM environment. This is a phrase now that has come up quite a lot in this event. So let's actually go through what the BIM environment is. There are frequently asked questions around this term. Question number one is, what is the BIM environment? Well, in short, from what I managed to gather from today's event, is that it is an environment for building information modeling and managing technologies hosting service. So the idea is that a whole bunch of technologies are in combination with each other, and it provides an atmosphere for data to grow, for information and modeling to develop, for communication to happen, for collaboration to take place, for better coordination from one centralized common data point. Or as many of you have actually heard, common data environment, CDE. So that is the best way we define the BIM environment. The second most frequently asked question is BIM just a phase? Well, maybe I can throw this question back. Was CAD just a phase? Honestly not. It was a methodology, and it's the same with BIM. BIM should be considered more methodology than a phase. This is an idea to join separate teams and information throughout the whole project lifecycle, no matter at what stage you've begun. So even if you're coming in at a construction point, you should be able to gain access from the designing and conceptual point, because there might be information that is relevant to you at your current position. So again, BIM is a new methodology in the new world of technology. The third question we usually get is, why should I care about BIM? And honestly, you should be asking this question. Why should you care about utilizing a BIM environment in your projects? Well, in short, the BIM method will effectively control how you create and share data amongst the project team at any given time during the project lifecycle. Remember, this methodology is taking over the previous item or the previous method. So the way we control, handle, and distribute information within our project is now more refined. It's more robust to the users or to the team or even to the discipline within the project. And these are one of the many reasons you should start caring about this new methodology. So since you've got a little bit more information about BIM, let's actually put BIM now into the context of the architectural, engineering, and construction environment. How does BIM affect the project lifecycle? So in its basics, if we break down the project lifecycle to 4 stages, a designing phase, a plan phase, a building phase, and an operations phase, where do you fit in here? If you are doing quantity takeoffs, where do you want to start? Keep in mind that you are now working within a BIM environment. So we want to win more with competitive bids that are generated from accurate estimate, let's say, products or produced from integrated takeoffs and quantities. So the idea is whatever happens between any one of these stages, we need to be able to jump in and seamlessly just work. And that was the idea behind the BIM environment. So the idea here is whether you are in the designing phase, the planning phase, the building phase, or even the operations phase, we bring every project team together from design to turnover on a single construction software solution. So we are connecting workflows and collaborate securely from one single environment. And this is how BIM should be affecting our project lifecycle. So you know more about BIM, and I'm sure you've learned a lot from the other presenters around the Autodesk construction platform. So let's actually go talk about Autodesk Docs. Sorry, not Autodesk Docs, Autodesk Takeoff. Let's see how you can utilize the common data environment that is Autodesk Construction Cloud in order for you to start running more automated quantifying takeoffs instead of a manual approach. So let's begin at the very beginning. And this comes from the Integrated Document Management System. So if you want to find out more about this item, go see Michiel's presentation on Docs. Remember, Docs is has a simplistic navigation. The idea here is for users to just click and go. We also have a simplistic document control. In terms of our document control, we are controlling, or we give right or secure access to specific individuals at any given point in time within the lifecycle. So whether you need to view a document or download a document, we can control that. Thirdly, document reviews and approvals. From here, we can actually take whatever we've uploaded, whether it's a design, a Word document, an Excel BOQ, we can take these elements into the cloud and start working with them. Remember, information that is stored in a common data environment is cognitive. It should be able to talk back to you. You should be able to know what version you're working with. Has the document been approved or rejected? Which consultant uploaded that particular document at a specific time? And if you're working in the Autodesk Construction Cloud, you're always working with the latest information, as it is always reflecting within that platform. The fourth major item that is a part of the Autodesk Doc system is, of course, the document coordination. So the idea here is whatever I upload, I can coordinate from. I can write markups, I can generate issue tags, and then assign those tags to individuals who are responsible. So let's take this from a QA/QC perspective. If I need to flag an item that hasn't been adjusted for or counted for, I would much rather want to flag this in a common data environment that allows me to communicate with other consultants on the project at that point in time, instead of sending out an email from a manual work phase that I took right at the beginning, only to be met by the phrase, I didn't get that email. So you want to avoid those level of frustrations. So stay in the automated environment where data is talking back to you. So this is how the document management side can help you do better quantity takeoffs from a project model or a project drawing. Let's talk about the next feature, design reviews. In terms of design reviews, we kind of touched on this topic where we can create issues and assign them to individuals. But this goes even further. If I've created 50 issues that are, let's say, QA/QC affiliated, I can write up a report. This report can be very specific to a user in the project, a company in the project, or even a role within the project. So, hi, electrical engineer. I've seen all of these items that are an issue on your BOQ. Please go adjust and fix. All that communication, again, happens within the common data environment. Another thing that does come with Autodesk Takeoff is, of course, your 2D takeoff elements. So when we are running up 2D takeoff elements, we have a range of digital dimensioning tools, area items to go measure areas, perimeters, and volumes. We have the ability to go add, let's say, metric and imperial units. So we can switch between the two at any given point in time in the project. So if we get something from the United States, we can then measure according to their scale of measurement, versus something here in South Africa where we can then run a metric scale of measurement. We also have the ability to link takeoffs to drawings. So if you're looking at that little video that was playing in the background, you would have noticed that I took an element from, let's say, description A, and I'm linking it to a document that is already on the common data environment. So whatever was building and developing within Autodesk Docs, I'm utilizing it in my add-on as takeoff. Again, we are running everything from one single source of truth. Another item to look out for is that we can run integrated 3D takeoffs. What do I mean by this? Well, Much like the 2D takeoff section, we can isolate 3D models, regardless if the model is a Revit item or an IFC item. So again, here we have a range of digital tools in order to help us. We can classify and categorize 3D components. Everything is categorized according to its usage. So furniture is furniture, pipes are pipes, ducting is ducting. Nothing overlaps the other because they're all within their place. Further to this, we have model properties. So whatever the designer is giving you from the model, you can go take even more information. Materials, sizes, URL codes to various manufacturers and specifications. Some designers go even as far as adding the cost value. So for those of you who are familiar with Revit, you can open up your family types box and register all that metadata. And the same goes for the IFC models. We have a customizable classification class. So yes, we can run the generic items. However, if you want to go customize something, this environment is opened for you and your team. And you are not going to be stopped just because you can't create a specific classification or description. Another item is we can link takeoffs to a 3D model. So again, if I play that video for you below, you will notice that my takeoff series is coming from the model. I'm not starting the takeoff and then linking to the model. The moment you open up the model, you can start your takeoff and quantifying process. So we are quickly generating quantities from building information models to save time in visualizing project scope. So we use customized formulas, by the way, you can do as well, to generate complex quantities from both 2D and 3D information. And that is the power of Autodesk Takeoff. The ability to take somebody else's information that was shared with you or coordinated or collaborated with you and start bringing that into your new QA/QC takeoff process. So just to summarize, regardless if you are working in the design phase, the planning phase, the building phase, or the operations phase, the power of the Autodesk Construction Cloud is that you can utilize Autodesk Docs at any one of these stages, whether you're beginning or ending, whether you've started at the beginning or you've been invited somewhere through that process. You can link your Autodesk Build account to that same project. So everything that sits in the common data environment is open for you to bring into your add-on, which is Build. You can link Revit files via collaboration and coordination. So we have real-time clash detection items for the entire designing team to use. This way they can best manage their designs according to what will be iterated on site. And then of course, Autodesk Takeoff fits in at any stage within your project lifecycle. So whether you're going to do quantifying at the very beginning or quantifying at the very end, regardless if you're working for a designing company or if you're within the construction company itself, you have access to that level of information that lives within the common data environment. So connect workflows, teams, and data at every stage of construction. And that is basically the Autodesk Takeoff presentation. So for all of you who stayed, this is now our Q&A session, and we'll give it a few minutes for you to ask your question. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time. Just by the way, we do have a coffee session happening later on today. So do look out for that because you will be able to grill all other presenters here. I think Michiel and Tabello should be in that coffee session as well as myself. So if you want to ask us any other BIM affiliated questions, you're more than welcome to. There's also Revit experts, CAD experts, Navisworks experts, and experts within other softwares and platforms that we utilize here at Modena. So again, guys, thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you at our coffee session.